Welcome back to another episode of the Element Q podcast. I am delighted today. I'm actually just meeting this person. We have a wonderful mutual friend, but Charles Xavier is the guest today. And we are talking about, of course, a deeper healing within the LGBTQ plus community. And when Charles and I were talking before we hit record, the topic or the theme that came up for him is resilience. And how does resilience play a role in our deeper healing? Welcome to the Element Q podcast. I'm your host, TJ Woodward, and I'm thrilled to have you join us for this empowering journey. Each week, we shine a light on the authors, thought leaders, therapists, coaches, and healers of all types who are making a difference in the LGBTQ plus community. Together, we honor those who came before us, the courageous and resilient trailblazers who stood for our rights and recognition. Their strength laid the foundation we stand on today. Here, we celebrate their legacy by diving into the stories, insights, and tools that inspire gentleness, healing, and transformation. So get ready to be uplifted and empowered. This is the Element Q podcast. Charles, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Well, I am delighted that you're here. I'm looking forward to this conversation. Why don't we start with telling our listeners, telling our viewers a little bit about, first of all, the work you do, and then I might ask you a little bit about your personal journey of why you're drawn to the work, because I know there's a reason.
Yes. So it's interesting. I'm an associate marriage and family therapist, but I'm also in school working on my doctorates in clinical psychology. I'm focusing with the doctorates in forensic psychology, but with my marriage and family therapy, I primarily focus with younger kids, ages 4 to transitional age adults, 24 years old. It's been fun. It's been different, and I love it.
I love that you love it because that's such an important group of people, and not everyone is called to work with young people in that way. So thank you. I just want to start with thank you. And I'm going to guess there's something in your own journey that drew you to this work in general in therapy, but maybe specifically with young folks. So I'd love to hear about that.
Actually, working with kids was the one population I did not want to work with.
I love it. As a matter of fact, I never wanted to work with him.
My mentor, when I was going through my master's program, had this idea that you should always start with the population that you do not want to work with, so you can at least get that experience. And so I ended up at a program that works in elementary schools here in San Diego, and then fell in love with it. I never wanted to leave my kids after that.
Wow. I just think that's so cool. I really relate to that because I literally promised myself, I will never work in addiction treatment. That is not going to be my journey. I am in recovery myself, but during the time I was saying that, my first 20 years of recovery, I never thought I would do it. And then one day I just found myself, it's almost like accidentally woke up and thought, oh, how did I get here? Right. And then absolutely fell in love with it. And so much of it was my own journey with my addiction, my own journey with getting sober and not doing some of the deeper healing and what that created. So would you be willing to share some of your own journey, specifically your early journey, since you are working with kids?
Well, it's funny. So if you pay attention to my name, you can see it kind of falls in pop culture as Charles Xavier, Professor Charles Xavier from X-Men. When I was a kid, I was so in love with the X-Men. So I always wanted to just understand why people did the things they did, how they thought, where they were coming from. And I wish I could do it like Professor X. So why not go into psychology? And then as a kid, I'm not going to lie, I was not the nicest kid out there. I was not the best kid out there. I had my good side and my bad side. And there was moments from my childhood I can remember where I met other therapists, and I went to therapy as a kid. Did not know that that's what that was. I thought I was just going to play with somebody. But looking back at it, I can see where they were helping me with different things, anger issues, not helping me find out that where my disabilities were coming in as a child. And so it really drew me into the field, and I went a huge roundabout way just to get back to psychology. I graduated with my bachelor's with over 170 credits because I started with general studies. Then I went to nursing. Then I went back to general. Then I went to psychology. And I just kept collecting credits, which I don't recommend to anybody. But then eventually I came back to psychology, and it was like, why don't I go with what I originally wanted from when I was a little kid? And that's how I got here.
Oh, I love it. So let's dive into this topic, or at least dive into a conversation about the topic resilience. I love that because, there is a lot happening in the world, as there always is. I think if you drop a person on planet Earth at any time in history, we could say these are very interesting times. We could say they're wonderful times. We could say they're difficult times, right? And all of that would be true. I'm obviously significantly older than you, but I walked through the AIDS crisis. I walked through a lot of different things, happening in the country, in the world. Times where I felt like we had our rights, times I felt like we didn't. I lived in a state where being gay was illegal for the years I was coming out. So many layers of things happening out in the world. And as seductive as it is to talk about that, I think the deeper conversation here is this inner resilience in the midst of that. I would love to say we can control the world and we have a vote, we have things that we can do. And ultimately, I think this is an inner journey. So I'm curious for you about, the topic of resilience and how it factors in, both for you and then also, of course, the young people you're working with.
Yeah. Well, you're not much older than me. Let's just start with that. What are you, like 28,
Oh,
29?
100%. Yes. Yeah.
So I was raised around, I was raised during the AIDS epidemic when it was labeled as GRID, and then it changed over to HIV eventually, stigma that went around that. I was in the military during Don't Ask, Don't Tell. I'm one of the few people who can proudly say that during that time that Don't Ask, Don't Tell was present, I was almost kicked out, but a group of peers fought to keep me in. So I was one of the few people that was allowed to stay in under Don't Ask, Don't Tell while being out. So talking about that and resilience, I could have given up then when I was getting kicked out, because that was a huge part of my life, a huge part of my growth being in the military. And I'm still here, but I don't like the term resilience though. It's resilience talks about how we have survived and how we have thrived in the face of adversity, but it's also minimizing to me of like the trials that you're going through. Yes, you're very resilient. You can handle this, but are you really? What about the inners that you're dealing with of all the screaming that you're going through and all the fear and sadness and the hatred and that you're dealing with, but you're still putting that smile on your face to keep going. And in our community, it's there, it's ever present. And the kids I work with now, they have their own problems to deal with that you and I couldn't even imagine. It's ironic because my dissertation for my doctorate program is talking about internalized homonegativity and intimate partner violence and the difference in generations. And I'm very much focused on how levels of outness in that plays in intimate partner violence and internalized homonegativity. Whereas kids these days, it's natural to come out. It's okay to come out. It's not as much stigma about coming out, whereas it was with you and I. But they still have their issues they're dealing with that challenges their resilience. So, yeah.
First of all, I want to say thank you. I really appreciate you having a more nuanced perspective on resilience, because I do think that the shadow side of the term resilience, or even the idea of being resilient, is to just like be strong, be brave, crush it. You've got this, without acknowledging the pain, right? I mean, I grew up in Indiana in the 1970s and really absorbed a lot of internalized hatred, self-hatred for being a little queer boy when I didn't really even know exactly what that was, right? And I do really also appreciate that you're talking about this generation, because someone in my generation might be like, kids today, they don't know how bad we had it, right? I mean, we had to walk across the shag carpet to change the channels. That kind of like idea that like we struggled with coming out. But I can't imagine, Charles, I can't imagine being in junior high school or in high school with social media, with apps, with all the things that kids are dealing with today, that like I can't even conceive of what it's like in that kind of developmental stage, right? Because I think about the thing that what I wanted most was for people to accept me back then, right? That was so present. And I think part of that is just being that age, right? Who am I? I'm starting to differentiate. I'm starting to try to quote unquote figure that out. And I say quote because like I was nowhere near figuring it out, but I was trying to navigate a world in my experience that was saying it's not really okay to be, this little boy that was more effeminate or, that I wanted things that most girls wanted, right? Much less all the layers of the stereotypes of what it was to be gay. Whew. But now I think about, yeah, certainly young people have it better, quote unquote, better in so many ways, but like the pressure, the societal pressure, we've got like the violence that happens in schools. I'm going to think about all the different layers, not to mention the polarization that we're constantly being fed on not only social media, unfortunately, but also mainstream media.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. It's the little things, and again, that's minimizing, but the little things that we dealt with when it came to just our sexuality and who we are developing ourselves, I feel like it's being blown up in so many other areas. Like you mentioned, social media in schools. We did not have that. I mean, I got my first cell phone when I was 12 years old, I think. So, and that did not have any other capabilities other than just calling, and it was a minutes phone. So now you have internet immediately available, communication with your friends and family immediately available, updates from everything right there. And the kids these days are constantly wanting to live up to what they're seeing others do, what these social media influencers are doing. And it's not helping with their identity at that, because like you said, we had our time when we were trying to figure out who we are, but now they're trying to figure out who they are sexually, as an individual, as a family, as a socially, while still navigating what others are expecting them or what others are expecting of them.
Yeah.
And it's not so, it's just not so organic anymore.
Yeah, and it's so layered, right? Because I think also about like, gender expression wasn't even a thing when I was a kid, but I think about that being really kind of my first struggle. Like, what does it mean to be a little boy and all the stereotypes? And then again, not to keep going back to it, but to add the pressures of social media on top of that, I can't even imagine. And I actually appreciate that you said they have to, and then said, oh, well, they want to, right? Be seen in a certain way, but it's almost feels like I can't imagine 11-year-old, 12-year-old, 13-year-old. I remember the pressure and feeling like I have to be a certain way. I didn't yet realize I could choose something unique or different. I mean, I definitely went through my rebellious stage when I was like 16, 17, and I was like very out and proud, sort of as the best I could. And yet, all of that, interestingly enough, I think speaks to where I'd like to kind of take us, which is what you were speaking to about resilience, because my response to my own shame, my own feeling disconnected from myself and trying to like perform in a way or look a certain way. My response, my strategy was to be just really out, really gay. I'm okay. I've got this, and like not really address the deeper pain that I had experienced. So that kept getting more and more buried. So yeah, it appeared that I was resilient in high school, but really I was in a lot of pain.
It's like I said before, that hiding that underlying, that smile that's covering up everything is there. And with, it's so, it's so interesting to see that with our kids too. Because looking at my little 4-year-olds that I've worked with, their pain is, what am I going to eat today? What toy am I going to play with? Does such and such want to be my friend? And that's the beginning of them building that resilience, building that coping, building that way of growing. And then all the way up to where we get to our teens now, where who am I? And trying to figure out all of their just basic nuances. And then navigating everything else in the world, it just makes it so much harder for them to grow and just build that foundation of who they are. And talking about resilience in that aspect, it looks different. And I don't know how to describe that difference that I'm seeing with them too. It's different. It's hard to put that into words.
And isn't that interesting? Because I'll share it from my own journey. Like was using, quote unquote, using outer resilience, like I've got this, or hyper confidence, or like looking like I had it all together. That was my sort of strategy. I'm going back to the high school years
Hmm.
specifically, but inside, I didn't feel resilience at all. Inside, I was just really saying, please don't see me, don't see the vulnerability, don't see the fear. And I was masking that. And yet, of course, at some point, and then I went into, kind of a lot of addictive behavior during the end of high school and right out of high school, got sober really young at 20. And yet, all of that underlying stuff, which, I can identify as shame, feeling broken, feeling not good enough, feeling unlovable, feeling unworthy, and really just walking around in the world trying to mask that. And that outer resilience really wasn't helping me heal the deeper inner, turmoil. And yet underneath it all, there was still this authentic self. And to me, the journey has been a journey back to that. And maybe that's what what I'm hearing you say, and you might not be talking about this at all, but it's sort of like knowing who we really are. It's not always necessarily easy to put words to that, but that kind of inner strength or inner resilience is really different than the outer, like trying to like navigate the world by looking good. Am I on to it? Is that kind
No,
of what you're talking about?
that's perfect. And it I can actually relate to that. Like I mentioned, I'm one of the few people that was allowed to stay in under Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And you talked about outer resilience. I lost all inner resilience
Mm.
when that going through that situation. I figured out who I am, what community I belong to. I did not know any of that. That was my rock bottom of being who I of my developmental phase, and it honestly took someone else telling me that I'm at my rock bottom to see that I'm there, to start trying to figure out who I am, to develop into the person I am now. I just started learning how I wanted to be, who I wanted to be, where I wanted to be, to grow. And so for us, we've been there already with just our sexuality and or in our situations here and there. And again, going back to my kids, it's not just that part of their lives anymore. It's everything is feeding into who they are. And how do you develop that resilience with so many different things telling you, you have to go here, you have to go there. So
Yeah, and how does a young person today even discover who they really are? And what does that journey look like? And again, I kind of think of it in layers. And the reason I think of it in layers is like I remember being a little kid and just being so happy and so filled with joy, and that just starting to diminish over time as I put these layers of like who I thought I should be, or and I don't know if it's who society thought I should be, but there were some pretty overt messages around what it meant to be a boy, what it meant, to be my race, what it meant to be where the part of town I'm from, like all the messages that were coming. And it just felt like layers on top of myself. And so for me, my journey was really about unlearning a lot of that and like really starting to discover, like I've absorbed the trauma from three generations of my parents, probably more, but like I can at least see knowing my parents' story and like them being in a loveless marriage and how, the layers, Charles, the layers. I just think about the layers. So I'm curious for anyone watching or listening, how did that you use the term rock bottom? So I think about that as a chance to rebuild too. I mean, it's a painful way to like, have those moments, but those of us who have been blessed with that, we get to rebuild our lives. What did that journey look like for you?
it was painful at the beginning. It was scary. Um, I cannot describe all the emotions I went through. That was the time of my life where the things that I should not have done, I either did to cope or I got really close to doing that would have completely ruined my life.
Hmm.
But then I also knew that there was something I wanted and there was a place I wanted. My favorite thing in the world is traveling. I love to travel. I love to go see new places, meet new people. And that was what was the beginning of pulling me out of my rock bottom phase. And I started traveling again. I got into scuba diving, and just bringing that in was giving me a chance to learn other cultures, learn other sports, other aspects of life that started to rebuild me up. And it was not linear, and nothing in mental health is linear anyway. So it was not linear. There was days where I was really great, and then there was other days where I felt like I was back at square one and nothing has progressed. But in doing so, I started figuring out who Charles is. And the Charles you are talking to today is not the same Charles you would have talked to 10 years ago. You mentioned earlier about coming out and being more feminine. I was more feminine then compared to I am now. I was more vocal and out there and just gay. I'm not as much anymore. And it's not because I'm ashamed of it. It's, I don't have to prove myself anymore. I am Charles. I am who I am. And that's the journey got me to where I am now. And I'm very proud of this journey. And people have asked me, would I do this again? As much hell as I went through to get to this point? Yes.
Yep. I'm with you. I've had moments that you could call rock bottom, or moments where the outer world crumbled in such a beautiful way as an opportunity for me to like ask, really, who am I now? And I appreciate you talking about, the masculine and feminine piece of it, because I do think, finding who we really are might not be who we think we are, in terms of expression, in terms of like, the more comfortable I am with myself, the more I just become myself, right? And that is less about how people are perceiving me and more about who I really am and what do I want to offer the world. And I say offer the world because it's those places of struggle, as much as, and thank you for talking about the pain, because I think sometimes, someone might listen to someone's journey and say, oh, well, I had this experience and I discovered who I am. And now I feel so much more at ease, and my inner resilience has allowed me to be who I am. But let's also talk about how painful it was. And for me, it was actually the most latest version of that was when I was 40 and my whole world kind of fell apart. And I was already working in behavioral health. I had gone back to school. But there was an inner knowing that I wanted to contribute something different for the second part of my life, right? I felt like it was a turning point. And I do think that can happen for people at 40. It can happen at other times. But I started asking myself, like, questions like, is this all there is? I had built this life that I thought, I was in my fabulosity, let's just put it that way. And I thought that was, sort of important to me. But there was an inner knowing that I wanted to do something that had more importance for my own journey. And what happened for me then is, as everything fell apart, it provided an opportunity for me to ask the deeper question, who am I here really? And like the quote unquote struggles I went through and the resilience that I was able to have. And I don't mean like we're talking about that outer resilience, but like finding a deeper place within myself has become my life's work. And I wouldn't change any of it, as painful as it was.
Yeah, it makes us who we are. And it's part of our whole growth process. And if we don't grow, if we don't experience these trials and tribulations, how can you truly say, I am who I am? I am this person. It's almost become superficial. And it's almost, it's to really go out there, it almost goes into the meaning of life. Like, how can you really enjoy and say that you have lived your life if you have not had a struggle here or there to help develop you into who you are?
Yeah. And I think about those layers we were talking about, right? And in my journey, what was really happening at 40 is all those layers I had built on top of this actual, like, light that I am underneath it, like we all are. That process was about starting to unlearn and dismantle some of those structures of knowing and those ways of being in the world, and getting in touch with, and I agree completely, like, what is the meaning of life? That's the big question. But like, I would say, what meaning do I want to bring to life? Right. And that's really the question that I live in now.
That actually is a really good question. I think that's what's driving me to continue going to school. So you mentioned life changes at 40. Well, my 40th birthday is next year. So wow. I will definitely be in the middle of that major life change. And I'm figuring out what I want to be when I grow up and what I want to bring to my life and to this world, this society. And for me, I want to help people, and not just I joined to be a therapist to help people. No, I want to help people. I love to teach. I love to help people think deeply about what they're dealing with, who they are, where they're coming from, And I guess it comes from my own journey of having to already have done that. I've had to have people teach me to help teach me how to be the person I am, who have guided me into careers, into different education systems, into just not making idiotic choices that are going to ruin my life. And so
Yes.
I love helping people to get to that same exact place. And it's fun, honestly. Just to see someone learn something new is just fun to me. I can do that all day and just enjoy life. That's where I'm at. That's how I see about what I want to bring to the world.
I love it. And I love the simplicity of like, just stop making idiotic choices that are going to ruin my life. I just think that's so clear. And because that's what I was doing over and over and over again. And I have so much compassion for myself looking back. And I'm not just talking about like in my teenage years and my early 20s. I'm like all the way up to 40. And I realize now I was making decisions based on this false identity. And when the false identity I'm speaking of is like, I'm broken, I'm damaged, I'm not good enough, I'm unworthy. And I would have loved to have told you 20 years into therapy, 20 years into recovery, 40 years old, that like that wasn't true for me anymore. Like, but the truth is that somewhere down in there, I still believe those things. And I was making these quote unquote idiotic choices because that's all I could do. Feeling unworthy and feeling unlovable caused me to behave in ways that confirmed that over and over and over again. And I just kept thinking the world was a difficult place. And then I came to that place of everything crumbling and realized, oh my gosh, I've been the creator of this. I'm not here to blame myself for that, but to say true inner resilience isn't really about how I'm acting. It's how am I relating to myself and understanding who I really am? And how can I start to build a life that's more congruent with that truth?
Mm-hmm. And the other part of that true inner resilience is how can I love myself and show myself that I love myself and that it is okay to make a mistake. It is okay not to be perfect. It's okay to have these thoughts, but it's also okay to work through them and show yourself that these thoughts are not you.
Isn't that the truth? I
Yes.
mean, the journey is ultimately a journey of learning to love all parts of self. And one of the things I like to lean into is I think about my nephew when he was like 2 or 3 years old, and he would be having an intense emotional experience. Some might call it a meltdown. It's actually an intense emotional experience. And what I learned is if I would get on his level and be present with him, he would work through it. You know, those emotions would be worked through. And there was a point I realized, oh my gosh, I love is a greater change agent. Love is what actually starts to heal. And I look what's happening in the world, and I understand the reactive impulse to see what we perceive to be the other side or othering someone or a group of people. And yet true change comes from learning to love even those parts of myself that, I'm not so proud of, including how I acted as a kid and as a teenager. I love that you opened with that. Like, yeah, I was a pretty bad kid and a pretty good kid, all wrapped in one. That's definitely true for me too.
It's so amazing that you mentioned co-regulation. So getting down to the level of your nephew,
Yeah.
even as adults, we need that. And even with our teens, they need that. And it's people don't realize how powerful that is, just getting down to someone's level. And I'm not talking about someone's height level, just getting down to where they are, whether it is their height, whether it is their emotional state, and helping them just work through that problem. And
Yes.
that right there is another way to cross those bounds between inner and exterior resilience because you're providing that exterior for the person and teaching them that internal way of coping and managing that it helps build that resistance to other trials that may come up. It helps build that way of coping with other things that may come up. And I love getting down on my kids' levels and just, hey, let's breathe for a moment. Let's just have that moment.
Oh, I love that, Charles. And it's so important because it's so the foundation for me personally of the work that I do with conscious recovery, because it's about really just being present with the person in front of me. I'm not here to fix a broken person. I'm here to just be with the person in their process. And I love that term co-regulation, right? Because that's really ultimately what we do as therapists, counselors, techs, coaches. It's let me be here present with you. And I remember what really changed me was the person who saw me and didn't try to see me as broken or damaged and try to fix me, but just be present with me. And I remember the feeling of that. And the best word I can come up with is I felt loved, I felt seen. Even though we don't always talk about that in our work, that's really the truth. Let me love and appreciate the person for where they are, because the answers are within them. The answers aren't mine. And if I'm here as a judge, they feel that. And I haven't really worked specifically with teens, but I imagine, because I've worked with a lot of young adults, and it's kind of not much different, right? A 22-year-old or a 19-year-old versus a 17 or 18-year-old. But like to really be seen is so valuable and they feel it.
Yes. I will say though, being seen, it's an amazing, like I agree with you, it's an amazing feeling, but the group I have the hardest with, and it's not because I don't want to work with them, it's just that connection, are preteens. And I'll admit that I struggle the most with them. It's they want to be seen in so many areas, and but what area do you want me to see you at? How do you want me to see you? How do you want me to come and be present with you? And I love working with them because they're a challenge, and they also frustrate me so much. If I wasn't bald, I would be bald now working with them. But it's great to be present with them, even the little ones, the adults, like we said, just being there and making sure they can be seen. And that was one of the biggest parts that helped me with my change, was being seen. That one person that said, "You're at your worst. You need to fix this." They saw me and they were honest. And that part, that honesty that we can bring as therapists, as people, as family, in all aspects, just that genuine honesty, not being a butthead, but honesty, that can help so much.
I love it. And I really appreciate you didn't exactly say this, but my filter said, yeah, a part of them wants to be seen and a part of them wants to hide. And that's true. That's just true for all of us, right? So how do I help cultivate, a safe space? Because we talk about safe spaces, but a truly safe safe space is let me see you and not try to change you. And let me just tap into the part of you who does want to be seen and also acknowledge and work with the part of you who doesn't. And that's really the dance, isn't it? That's really the dance of our work.
It is. It very much is. And it's why we're here. That I feel like we all are dancers in some way, like you said, and enjoy that dance because I'm not going to lie. It's fun. It's fun to see where you are as a person and see how I can bring that good spot out. Also bring out the bad spot so we can talk about it. And I don't even like saying the word bad either because it's not good and bad. It's that
Yeah.
positive, negative. They're both polarizing, but either way, it's
Language is so tricky, isn't it?
it is. It is.
Useful, not useful. Yeah.
But it's so much fun. Again, I don't know how to describe it either other way that other than just it's fun to just be able to be there. And again, every single time you see somebody, you're helping build their internal and external resilience. And to me, again, I don't like the word resilience, and also the word external resilience to me is just like that smile that everybody's seeing.
Right.
So I don't want to help build the fakeness. I want to help build that actual true who they are and what they're seeing.
Yes. Oh my gosh. What an incredible conversation. Believe it or not, we've already been doing this for 30 minutes. So I'm wondering, Charles, if there's anything in a moment, I'll ask if there's anything you want to say in closing. But I really loved and appreciate our nuanced conversation about this. And I also love the two things that are standing out for me right now is that you talked about the work being fun, because if I lose the fun or the excitement or the joy, I'll say the joy in this work, because really nothing in my life has been more rewarding than being present with someone and watching them have that internal shift and get something new out of not what I've done, but how I've held them and where they discovered it for themselves. I mean, that is the most fun I've had on planet Earth. So I appreciate that. And also just, straight up like, I don't really like resilience. And yet we're going to talk about it for 30 minutes. So I just appreciate that you did that. And so that's so great. Anything you want to say in closing?
No, this has been fun, and thank you for having me here. It's so great to be able to just talk about what I do and the field with someone who understands, and even people that don't understand. It's just fun. My word for today.
I love it. Our word for the day is fun. Obviously, everyone who's watching or listening Charles will have all his contact information in the show notes. Like, share, subscribe, you know what to do. And if this particular conversation has had meaning for you, or there's someone in your life who you think would really benefit from it, please send it to them. Charles, thank you again so much. And thank you, everyone, all of our viewers, who continue to tune in for these conversations at Element Q Podcast. Thank you so much. Peace and blessings, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Element Q Podcast. It's an honor to walk this path of healing and transformation with you. Remember, the courage and resilience of those who came before us live on in each of us. Let's continue to carry their legacy forward as we support one another in creating a world filled with love, gentleness, and empowerment. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please subscribe, leave a review, and share this podcast with someone who needs to hear it. Together, we're building a brighter future, one story at a time. Until next time, I'm TJ Woodward, and this has been the Element Q Podcast.